I had an old fence that was really in a poor area. It went zigzag down the bottom of a coulee, which presented possible erosion problems from livestock and wildlife trailing the fence and disturbing the vegetation. It was in the brush, it was through trees. Very bad for snow drifting to pile on the fence and break it down. The wildlife couldn't see it, so more of a tendency to run through it than actually see it and go under or over it. And it was just a real old fence. It was probably 60 or 70 years old.
Animals need space to move locally or short distances, and then seasonally for long distances. We have the recorded longest pronghorn and sage grouse migrations have both happened in the areas RSA works in. So if we can support those intact landscapes at scale and at distance, we reduce stress points and barriers for those migrating animals. So on Kevin's project, his main big game species of concern that was basically his maintenance nightmare for fencing is elk. His ranch is also winter range and migration range for mule deer and pronghorn. So by helping Kevin address fences that he wanted to address from a ranching standpoint, we're then able to reduce barriers for those migrating big game.
Typically, they have regulations where the bottom wire needs to be 16 inches off the ground minimum. We tried to make it 18 to 20. The top wire, I believe the new specs, BLM, Fish, Wildlife and Parks, around 42 to 44 inches. And we tried to keep the top wire at 40 or less. It's just easier for them to jump over, easier for them to travel under. Also a barbless wire on the bottom. A wider spacing at the top. If the wires are close together, sometimes they'll try to jump and they'll get their legs caught in here like this, and it'll twist on them. So with the wider spacing, there's less chance of them tangling in the wire and getting hung up. Everybody used to build fences differently. Now everybody's, well, especially us, are paying attention to the parameters of the wires. So trying to get the bottom wire as high off the ground as we can and the top wire as low as we can to allow ease of the wildlife passing under or over. So
RSA's work, and with support of our partners with the Department of Interior, BLM, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and then with support from Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks through a Department of Interior secretarial order, basically forced all of those groups to focus on big game. And RSA was able to take part in that as a partner, and that partnership has started with a few projects, that's led to a few more, that's led to a few initiatives, that has now led to a slew of partners putting together gigantic projects that are now in the order of millions of dollars of project help available for producers across central Montana to do migration work.
This sheep wire come in 1927 when the railroad come through. It was good in its day, but the cows are bigger now, and this used to be about this high. And now it just trains cows how to crawl fence. There's another wire down here on the bottom, two of them, that supposed to stop stuff, but the only thing that kind of deters is the antelope from going through it. So other than that, it's kind of useless.
AJ Watkins' project was one of the first big game projects we did. When we had identified and inventoried his project, we noticed he had a few miles of woven wire sheep fence that didn't really look like he used it. And we asked about it, and he's like, well, the day I can get rid of it, I will. It's not in my way at this point, so it's not a concern right now. So when big game funding came available, we worked with AJ, and we're like, well, if you will work to do something with that fencing, we can work to do more. So AJ's project is going to remove that woven wire sheep fence, and as part of that project, he's then able to meet some of the rest of his ranch project goals.
It's a good program. They help out everybody.
We just, as individual ranchers, just don't have much of a voice, and we don't have resources to gather partners, whether it's for funding or just for scientific data. Since we've been involved with groups, these other groups, we've just had all kinds of data and funding at our fingertips.